Hi there, we're here talking about a couple of big movies that are out in theaters right now. Mr. Hoos.
As we speak.
As we speak. Mr. Hoos and I will be talking about, of course, the Super Mario Galaxy movie. And a little bit later on, Kennedy Unthank will be here to talk to Joshua Enck, the director of A Great Awakening. He has some very interesting thoughts about the movie from Sight and Sound that details one of the more interesting periods of our nation's history. So I'm kind of excited to hear that interview as well. But for now, we're going to talk about something equally as exciting, Super Mario Galaxy movie.
Indeed we are.
So you saw it, Mr. Hoos.
I did.
Tell us.
Woohoo!
Tell us a little bit about what you thought of the movie.
I thought it was pretty great. Yeah. I mean, really, I thought it was one of those films that surpassed the movie that came before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's been...
And what was that movie?
There have been other Mario movies through the years, but the one that came out in 2023, which was the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Gotcha.
And this one is the Super Mario Galaxy movie. I mean, I don't know why they have these titles that are 15 words long. They
It really annoys me when I'm talking about them, honestly.
Mario 2. But anyway, I thought the film was actually quite good. I said basically that if the first movie, the Super Mario Brothers movie, was sort of the hint that you could make a really good video game movie, this one nails it. It really does. And the reason it does is because it takes the parts of that first movie that I thought everything worked well in that movie, but there were some elements that some families, for example, could be a little leery about. Some of the intense moments, some of the because there's a lot of battling and fights that go on between Bowser and Mario, and in that first movie, I thought there were some intense moments that were a little bit over the top. That, where they were going for that action element.
Yeah. But when you're talking about a movie made for little kids.
And because it's all cartoon characters, bright colors, it felt really intense. And for this new movie, they kind of dialed that back in interesting ways, First of all, they hired the creator of the Mario character, Miyamoto, I think his last name is, a Japanese individual who created the whole series.
He's got to be a trillionaire by now.
Yeah, he's obviously very talented. Anyway, they brought him on as a co-producer, and he was part of the creative team. And I think that was a brilliant move because it changes the texture, the dynamics of the film. And I'm not saying in a negative way. It doesn't tone everything down, but it makes things more balanced.
Yeah.
And in a way, it helps even out what potentially could be intense moments.
That's really interesting.
Hopefully that makes sense.
No, I think that's really interesting. Now, obviously, there's no such thing as a perfect movie. Definitely check out our full review at PluggedIn.com. But I did want to sort of unpack another thing that we talked a little bit about, and that is this movie really deals a lot with family.
Yeah. Well, and see, I was talking about Bowser Jr. being the villain. Just give you an overview. Bowser Jr. basically decides he's going to kidnap Princess Rosalina, who is sort of this magical character that they haven't really set up. They didn't set up in the prior movie, but she is this magical mother of stars. And she's got a magic wand that she waves around sometimes because she can levitate things and whatever. And Bowser Jr. wants to drain her power in this special machine.
Shame.
Yes, indeed. And then use it to dominate everything, and rescue his father, who is being held captive at Princess Peach's castle. Anyway, but the thing is that they play into that the fact that Bowser, in his time in captivity, has had time to think about things. He's painting, he's resting, He's looking at nature. And he's becoming more concerned about what kind of father he is. And that's an interesting choice because even though ultimately Bowser and Bowser Jr. get back together and they do some villainous things, there's that feeling that he's concerned about what kind of dad he is to his boy. And he says something at one point, family is forever, or something of that nature. And so it's constantly reinforcing this idea that family is a good thing that can make you a better person.
Yeah, that's really cool. You mentioned earlier that really this movie may be the prime example of a movie based on a video game being done right. Now, we have seen a lot of really terrible movies based on video games. The last two Mario movies seem like they've sort of cracked the code. Is that because Hollywood is just learning how to deal with these video game adaptations better, or has Nintendo itself figured out some magical element
I think with this one, it's much more the latter. And again, I think it's a lot of, because they're really leaning into the things that everybody loves about the games. And they're they've got tons of Easter eggs. So literally, if you're a fan of Mario games and the Super Mario Galaxy, if you're a fan, you will find so much in here to go, oh, look, oh yes, I remember that. That's all the way through the film. And if you're not, it's still fun. Yeah. But they're really leaning into that and making those elements work for them rather than worrying about competing against them. And I think that's what a lot of these video game movies tend to stumble. See, I personally, a lot of people like the Minecraft movie, for example, that came out last year. Yeah. And
it made a ton of money.
Yeah, it was big. I didn't really like it that much because as a gamer, I felt that it missed the heart of the game and just sort of leaned into lots of action adventure sort of stuff. That's why the new Super Mario Galaxy movie does a much better job because it says, yes, we can still have this wonderful adventure where you've got heroes, trying to save the day, but at the same time we can play into the fun side of the gaming. And I can't help but believe that this is the kind of game or kind of movie that will have kids going home and saying, I've never played one of those games. Can we get one? And Nintendo is saying, yes, welcome.
Come to the family.
Here
Come to
you
the
are.
Nintendo family.
That's right. But it is that kind of a game that is so positive and fun by the end that it will inspire kids to want to join in. And not only that, but it also has some nice elements that I think some people long for.
As we mentioned, there are definitely a few problems that you will want to watch out for. Well, but very, very few, relatively speaking.
Again, there is that thumping action. There are thumping moments, and there's that sort of thing that you might watch out for little kids.
Sure.
But by and large.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us. We will now turn it over to Kennedy Unthink and his interview.
Well, I am here with director Joshua Enck. He is with Sight and Sound Theaters, and he is the director of A Great Awakening, which has just released in theaters as of last Friday. So first thing I wanted to ask, A Great Awakening is obviously about George Whitefield and his relationship with Ben Franklin. I wanted to ask you, though, Mr. Enck, of all of the prominent theologians that you could have covered, why start with George Whitefield?
I'll make a really long story short. About 4 years ago, I really felt like the Lord, I know that the Lord put on my heart to do a film on liberty. On the Liberty Bell, it says from Leviticus, proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. And that bell used to ring out over that city of brotherly love. And the word liberty is used quite a bit in different circles. People have adopted it and made it their own and different definitions of it. And this film is really about the true biblical definition of liberty, to be set free from sin in order, to live a life that, that is there for us through Christ. And so I started to explore that word liberty, and I knew that the 250th anniversary was going to be this year in 2026 for this nation. And I thought it was going to be a film about George Washington. And I kept hitting
Hmm.
roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And I went away by myself with my dog to Valley Forge at an Airbnb, and I just spent time with the Lord. And on day 2, the Lord spoke to my heart. He said, Joshua, you have liberty right. You have your Georges wrong. And I immediately thought of George Whitfield, who happens to be my writing partner, Jeff Bender's favorite American in history.
Okay.
American, but in history that impacted America and the colonies.
Hmm.
So I started to research George Whitfield, and I just about fell off my chair when I realized that this man was gifted with a supernatural speaking voice. He wanted to be
Hmm.
an actor on stage. That's something we could relate to here at Sight and Sound. And instead of using his voice for the acting for the stage, he used it for the pulpit, and
Yeah.
literally turned the world upside down. Arguably the most powerful evangelist to ever be to set foot on American soil.
Hmm.
And then providentially becoming best friends and business partners with Ben Franklin and sparking
Hmm.
a Great Awakening. It felt like it was absolutely a story we had to tell.
Regarding their friendship, actually, what surprised you about that when you first started to realize that they actually had correspondence?
Yeah, the fact that they were friends is what surprised me the most. You have complete opposites. You have, George Whitfield, who is passionate and zealous, and he would preach 3 sermons a day. He'd wake up way before the sun came up. He would ride horse
Hmm.
5,000 miles up and down the eastern seaboard of the colonies, proclaiming liberty and freedom in Christ. And then this scientist, man who needs proof in order to believe anything, Ben Franklin, who's probably our most celebrated non-believer, deist of our founding fathers. They're complete opposites,
Hmm.
but they met and they're in 1739, and Ben Franklin heard George Whitfield's powerful voice and was compelled to get to know him. And
Yeah.
so they had this incredible friendship based on respect for one another. But Ben
Hmm.
Franklin also knew there's a commercial side to this with how famous George Whitfield was, and he really was a phenomenon. He was like a rock star in the colonies. Ben Franklin wanted to take advantage of that, started to print all of his sermons and all of his whereabouts, and he made a lot of money off of George Whitfield. But what he was
Hmm.
doing was he was promoting the greatest and most formative event in American history, known as the First
Hmm.
Great Awakening.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, when I watched the movie, I really loved how you show over the years how their friendship deepens and they become more connected with each other's beliefs, and especially that I won't spoil it, but the final scene where they're talking together,
Yeah.
just such a powerful scene. And I wanted to ask if there was anything you think modern audiences can learn from their friendship today.
Oh my, yeah. I mean, just like a liberal debate, which definitely what it means is freedom to disagree and still have
Hmm.
respect for each other, and actually still even be friends. I mean, that's incredible. There's
Hmm.
Franklin and George Whitfield were very different in their beliefs, but they had a respect for one another, an admiration for one another. That doesn't mean that George Whitfield didn't attempt to lead Ben Franklin to Christ, because he did.
Hmm.
There are actual letters that exist where George Whitfield would write Ben and plead for him to consider the truths of the gospel. And
Yeah.
Ben Franklin, famously said, "If I were ever to have this born again experience, I would never give you or anyone else the privilege of having it." And that's true.
Hmm.
He actually said that. But like, that was Ben at the surface. I think there was a lot of defense mechanisms built into his DNA to keep him
Yeah.
from considering those deep Holy Spirit led truths. But something got into him, because the speech that Ben Franklin gives at the Constitutional Convention towards the
Hmm.
end of this film, that is word for word historically accurate, gives you an insight into the transformation that actually did take place in Ben Franklin. And we need to hear that speech again today as a nation.
Yeah. And can you actually expound a bit on that, on the spiritual roots of the United States? I mean, you have people like Benjamin Franklin who are these self-proclaimed deists in a sense, and even yet you have people like George Whitfield who, through their influence, through their friendship, you see people even like Benjamin Franklin who are kind of founding the country with those Christian principles, even if they themselves don't identify that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for me, and I think for many Americans, our American history starts at 1776, the
Hmm.
Declaration of Independence. And they were a self-governing people, and they wanted to deal with the tyrant across the sea. And,
Hmm.
their rights, it's not given to them as a gift by a king, but, their faith is a right given to them by God. So it's like that stuff was all built into them. How? That's the question, is how was that built into them? Well, that's where this film answers that question. This
Yeah.
film depicts the 30 years that led up to that 1776 moment. And
Hmm.
the Bible's definition of a generation is 30 years. And it's interesting that from 1739 to 1770, George Whitefield and others, like Jonathan Edwards, the Wesley brothers, they literally turned and overhauled the culture. And we know that
Hmm.
politics are all downstage of culture. And so this film shows the cultural revolution that happened prior to the American Revolution. And that's why we say
Hmm.
this is not a movie, it's a movement. And this is about the revelation before the revolution.
I want to actually point out something else. When I was watching the movie, I was pausing it to go look up some of the historical sources, and I largely came away thinking, oh, this is really faithful to those events. I want to ask, how did you balance that accuracy with the demands that storytelling, film storytelling actually demands with creative liberty?
I'm thrilled. I'm pumped that you did that, because when we were creating this script, we actually talked about people doing that. They're
Hmm.
going to fact check us, and we're a ministry at Sight and Sound. We've been doing this for 50 years. This is only our second feature film, but we're not a stranger to storytelling.
Of course.
And our principle is to stick with the facts wherever possible. John
Hmm.
Adams says facts are stubborn things. I love that. You can't get around it. A fact is a fact. And I actually believe and feel like facts are actually more inspirational as a storyteller than fictional imagination. And so we wanted to lay a groundwork or foundation for our culture today that they can
Hmm.
trust on, that they can trust. And Sight and Sound has become a brand that people trust, and we didn't want to lose their trust. And we certainly didn't want to soft shoe this thing or make it sugary sweet for the Christians. Uh,
Hmm.
Wanted to tell this story truthfully,
Yeah.
because the flaws in the individuals. We didn't want people to walk away from this film idolizing George Whitefield and putting him on a pedestal. Only Jesus belongs there. And so we had to bring out his flaws and obviously Ben Franklin's flaws. So, man, the truth wins, and we really wanted
Hmm.
to have a portrayal that people can try to break, and they'll largely find that um, it's rooted in facts.
Something I actually wanted to point out when I had finished watching the movie, I thought one of the coolest things in the movie is that you guys wrote your own hymn.
Yeah.
And it was something that was completely unexpected for me when I listened to it. It sounded like an authentic hymn, maybe one I just hadn't heard before. And so I tried to look it up, and I saw, no, this is something you guys had done yourselves. Can you talk a bit about what made you and Chad Marriott, your composer, what made you move in that direction?
Yeah, you're it to my ears. You said that one that you felt it was familiar, and that's what we wanted to do. So the credit goes to Chad Marriott, our composer. I wrote in the script that I wanted a hymn to be sung that makes it a shared experience when Whitefield first
Hmm.
comes to the colonies in 1739. And that's it. It was in the script, and we didn't get to it yet. We didn't write any lyrics to it. And much to my surprise, Chad had already started working on it, and I
Hmm.
wasn't aware of it. And Chad is an incredible person. He came to us from England. He was born and raised in England. He married an American missionary and moved back here to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And he is just absolutely brilliant with melody and lyric. And so I went up to his office one day, and on his whiteboard were the lyrics to this hymn, "Awaken Us Today." And I started reading it, and I was already moved. And then he's like, in his British accent, which I'm not going to try to attempt right now. Uh, he's like, "Would you like to hear it?" And I said, "Of course." So he started to play the hymn and sing it, and
Hmm.
my eyes welled up with ears, and it felt so familiar. And people started coming into his office and saying, "What is that?" And that started the process of our own first original hymn.
Wow.
And so that got legs to it. And I feel like it's an anthem that can go well beyond this film. I feel like it's one that we're going to hear show up, in churches and at events and things, because it's so meaningful and deep and aligns with where we are today as a nation.
I thought it was a great song. I loved when I looked at the lyrics, I thought they were just very nice lyrics. So props to Chad.
Props to Chad.
Now that you've done the story with George Whitefield, do you have any plans for any other theologian stories?
Yes, we do. So Sight and Sound Films, we are commissioned by the board of directors to tell stories of figures from history that changed the world because Christ first changed them. That's our mandate. That's what we're commissioned to do. Different than our Bible stories on stage. Our stage productions are Bible characters. They're evangelical in nature. But for our films, it's figures from history that changed the world because Christ first changed them. So, our first film, I Heard the Bells, which came out in 2022, told the story of Henry Longfellow and his famous Christmas song. And this one, is obviously about George Whitefield. And our third film, which we're already a year into, will do very much the same thing. And so, I can't share what that is just yet.
Of course.
But it's exciting. It's incredible. It's very familiar. It's a story I can't believe hasn't been told. I know a lot of filmmakers say that, but I sincerely believe that because we get our marching orders from the Lord. We aren't a ministry or a company that chases fads and what will make a commercial success. We say no to the good ideas and we say yes to the God ideas. And so we choose the films, the shows that we feel the Holy Spirit is leading us to do. So films are not about the quantity, it's about the quality of film. And so we're not in a hurry to bang out a bunch of movies to get famous. We're going to rest and trust the Lord and do the story that is put on our heart.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks again for having me. Love Focus on the Family, and the ministry is just absolutely incredible. It's life-changing. We're all in this together. We have different calls. We have the same calling, different methods. And I would just say for our 250th anniversary as a nation, we are in that right now. And before the fireworks and the cannons and confetti of the 4th of July, I really, really encourage people to go and see this film. It's a prophetic film, a foundational film. Bring your churches, your families. I feel like it's our responsibility to inspire and educate and inform the church so that we can equip them, which is right out of Ephesians. And so may this film equip the church to be the church, capital C. And go out and check out A Great Awakening. You can go to agreatawakening.com, and hopefully it'll be in the theaters for a very long time.
Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Kennedy. Really, really interesting conversation. Really appreciate you joining us, and we really appreciate you joining us today. Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share, subscribe. We do enjoy doing these. We love having these conversations. We'd have it without you, quite honestly. But if you'd like to join us, we'd love to do that too. So please join us next time. Bye.